Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with Netacea, Dissecting the Bots Threatening Streaming Services. Thanks for joining today. Just to introduce ourselves, my name is Alex McConnell, Senior Content Manager here at Netacea. I'm joined by Cyril Noltego, Principal Security Researcher. Hi Cyril.
Hi Alex, and hi everyone. Thanks for joining.
Okay, let's get started then. I just want to sort of set the scene about the streaming services landscape and why attackers are targeting it. So it's growing massively year on year. I think this has been a massive growth since the pandemic, and even before that, really, it's really changed the way that we consume digital media, TV, films, that kind of thing, to the point where now it's projected that by the end of the year, $108.5 billion will be generated in revenue from the streaming industry. In fact, 99% of US households have at least one online streaming subscription, and 36% of all TV viewership is via streaming now, which is higher than cable and broadcast television.
That's incredible, 99%. I didn't realize it was that high. I assumed it was high, but
yeah, it really has become just part of everyday life for people, especially it's part of the way that you view television now. If you think about it, I don't think I ever watch sort of terrestrial or cable TV anymore. I always just stream myself personally. Don't know if you're the same, Cyril.
Yeah, same. I haven't got a TV license, so I can't watch terrestrial TV. I can only.
Nor can you stream iPlayer, can you, Cyril?
No iPlayer for me either, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So obviously attackers have taken note of this as well, and seen the opportunity to make some money here, which is quite often the main motivation for cybercrime. And in fact, Cyril, I think you've done some research into just how many stolen streaming accounts are out there on the web that criminals have obtained and are trying to sell and try and make some money. And this is from just June, wasn't it? That over 340,000 accounts were for sale across these marketplaces. And of those, even across those, I think that was from about 1,500 different individual listings.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because we monitor a number of these marketplaces, and just by eyeballing it, you can see that in terms of the industries that are targeted streaming was up there. We hadn't really pulled the stats to kind of actually see these numbers, but from just looking at it, we were like, yeah, streaming is going to be one of the higher ones. And yeah, when we looked at the data for June, it was astounding, like over 340,000 accounts for sale.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned the 1,500 or so listings. I think there was about 700 or so listings where they claimed to just have an unlimited number of these accounts available to sell. So there's quite a brazen kind of industry where they can, if you can call it an industry, there's a lot of money involved, obviously, where they can just take these accounts at will, it seems, and they're selling them on, obviously, they're going to sell them for a lot less than what they're worth from the original the actual services themselves, because obviously they're trying to make money, so they're undercutting what these accounts are actually being sold for, to the tune of 82.5% cheaper on average.
Yeah, so they're undercutting, but they don't have the upfront costs that the streaming services have, right? They don't need to either create or get licenses for content that they're distributing. So they can still make a lot of profit even though they're undercutting the streaming services quite heavily.
Yeah, and unlike a lot of other kind of cybercrime things where people are trying to sell things, they don't have to store any inventory or ship it out or anything like that. It's quite a sort of low upfront cost and low risk kind of activity, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so setting the scene there. How do they actually get hold of these streaming accounts? It's usually through account takeover. Do you want to sort of go through a bit about what that actually entails and what that actually is, Cyril?
Yeah, so account takeover, I mean, it's it's really in the name. It's taken over or seizing control of accounts that you shouldn't have access to. And there's a number of ways that attackers can do this, whether it's from kind of your brute force type attack. So that could be something like credential stuffing or credential cracking. More to your kind of your specific attacks where you've got a certain account that you're looking to take over. You might use a phishing attack there to get some credentials from them, or some other types of social engineering, or even have malware on a device that collects the credentials and gets into them.
Yeah. So let's go into sort of why streaming accounts are so popular with these criminals. So as you mentioned before, it's quite a low effort attack, and they can sell accounts, with very little effort at high volume. They could sell 1,000 in a day, and it would be no more difficult for them than selling 100 a day, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think with streaming accounts, because obviously the cyber criminals that are taking over the accounts, they need an audience or a market to sell to. And with streaming accounts, I think people are generally less averse to using a stolen streaming account than they would be to using a stolen, let's say, e-commerce account, right? Because it's seen as not as harmful to the person who owns the account. And so because of that, the cyber criminals can reach a wider audience with the illicit accounts they're trying to sell.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's also quite difficult for an owner to spot an account theft as well. I mean, how would you know if your account is being sold on to someone else? Because quite often, you can have multiple people logged in watching at one time. I know some services put a limit on that, so maybe you'll notice like, oh, someone else is using this account when you go to use it, and you're like, that's strange. But then again, quite a lot of people will share their accounts with their family members, so you might just assume that someone that you have shared the account with is using it. So it's quite difficult for the owner of the actual account to spot that the theft has actually happened.
Right, and I know some streaming services will send you a notification if there's a login from an unusual area, how many people actually check those notifications. But yeah, it's hard because, like I said, with the kind of the e-commerce account, it's not like someone's going to buy something with your account. You're going to see a charge come up that you weren't expecting. You might see a different show coming up in your continue watching, and you're like, oh, I didn't start watching that. But the signs are a lot harder to see.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you'll go to watch a new series and you're already halfway through it. It's like, I don't remember watching. I need to watch a recap or something.
The amount of times I fall asleep in series is I'll probably just think, oh yeah, no, I must have just started this and dozed off.
And also talking about it being a low effort attack, but there are easy ways for bots or attackers to get in and actually attack these login endpoints, because there's so many different devices that you could log in from, right? And that's like an essential for a streaming service. You don't want to just be able to log in via your browser. You need to be able to log in via your smart TV or a games console or your phone to be able to watch this content, don't you? And that can be quite difficult to defend against, I think.
Yeah, and apart from defending against that as well, that also has an impact on the passwords people use for streaming, because if you're trying to log in with a smart TV or a console where instead of a keyboard you're using a controller or a remote where you're having to go on a virtual keyboard and type stuff in, that's normally quite slow. And so you tend to have people using more simple passwords, which they might be reusing there. And again, that helps the cyber criminals to actually get those passwords. Whereas if it was, just on a desktop or a laptop computer where you've got a keyboard, you might opt for a stronger password.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to use like password managers and stuff like that when you factor in, if you're on your Xbox or your smart TV or something, trying to think of a good password or retrieve that. So that brings us on to the process of how an attack actually works. And I'll let you talk about the Blade, Cyril, since you are an expert in this how we actually define how attacks work. And I believe you're involved in actually defining what the blade is and how that works. So do you want to explain what the blade is?
Yeah, sure, Alex. So the Blade framework, that's the business logic attack definition framework. It's almost it's essentially it's a framework to describe business logic attacks and the phases and the phases they go through and the tactics and techniques that attackers use at different phases. So you're able to take a business logic attack and basically split it through from the resource development phase, where the attackers are acquiring the skills, the knowledge, the the tooling, and the resources that they need to go through the attack, through to the post-attack phase. So what do they actually do once they've successfully completed the attack? How do they monetize it? What's the benefit to them at the end of it? And it's really good because it allows you to see through the different phases what attackers are going to do. And if you can understand what people are doing at each phase, the tactics and techniques they're using, that allows you to also first see if you can detect those, and if you can detect them, can you mitigate them, and also can you prevent them in the first place from even happening?
Yeah. Do you want to sort of talk us through the example of using blades for credential stuffing, kill chain?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, credential stuffing is one of the ways that attackers can take over accounts, and it generally starts with a data breach of some sort. So credential stuffing is the process of taking usernames and passwords and basically throwing them at a website to see which ones stick. So it starts with credential acquisition and getting a data dump of some sort. But you also need some infrastructure as well. You need the bot to actually conduct the credential stuffing attack, and a way to control that, your command and control. And generally, you'll be using some proxies to hide your true IP address, because if you send thousands of login requests from one IP address, people are going to very quickly say that doesn't look right. And then you're also going to need the tools you're going to use. So whether that's developing a tool from scratch, or reusing a tool or a campaign that's been used before, that might be one that you've used before, or one that you've purchased or acquired from from another adversary who's selling these tools.
I think you're going to show us an example of how this works and what kind of a particular tool, but what are some of the sort of common tools that are used for this kind of attack?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for credential stuffing, there's a lot of variants of bullet tools. So there's open bullet, black bullet, silver bullet, and so on. And these tools basically, they are almost frameworks for credential stuffing, and they are then modified with a configuration file, which basically tells the tool how to attack a certain site. So, in your infrastructure acquisition phase, essentially, the tool, let's say open bullet in this case, you'll be acquiring that, and your tool development, you'll be either developing your config for that, or acquiring one. But to actually create that config, you probably need to do some reconnaissance. So these first two phases, the resource development and reconnaissance, it's not a straight linear, kind of cycle. There is some interplay between them, because often your reconnaissance will then inform your resource development. But in this case, you're going to be looking at the target and trying to identify what defenses they have in play, how does their authentication workflow actually go about. So you can input that into the development of your configuration file to attack that site.
Yeah.
And obviously, if this is a high value target, there's going to be some defenses in play. And the attackers know this, which is why there's a distinct phase for bypassing those defenses. And really, the bypass is going to depend on what type of defenses there are in place. So if there's captures in place, capture is quite a common defense put in place against bots. But there's kind of two ways that attackers can generally get around capture. One is to use a capture farm, which is basically a group of humans who are going to solve the capture for the bot. And the other is to actually, throw AI at it. AI is actually very good at solving captures now, and so the bot can solve the capture itself. But it's not just captures, that are the only defense and the only bypass that bot bot will use. There's other stuff like proxying we mentioned earlier, whether that's your user agent, your IP, or other elements to make you look different than you are. It could even be your fingerprints. And then smoke screening. So maybe I send a volumetric attack somewhere that looks like a denial of service attack, and that masks the fact that I've sent 2,000 requests at your login page because I've sent 100,000 elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've seen as well for some of our streaming clients is that they will sort of use a natural kind of smoke screen of a big event that's happening, a big live event, and sort of try and hide their login requests amongst legitimate login requests and sort of time it that way as well.
Definitely, if you know there's going to be an influx in traffic, what better time to hide your own traffic than then?
Yeah.
And also, I guess, because then the service is going to be, especially if it's a big live event, right? The service is going to be quite reticent to block or be very very harsh on their blocking, because in that case they might be impacting real customers. So it's really the perfect storm for attackers. And then you come to phase 4, so attack execution. This is where the attack actually happens. In this case, credential stuffing. So the bot is throwing these username and password pairs against the website to see which ones result in a successful login.
And these only really work, these attacks, because people tend to reuse passwords across different services, right?
Right. So so the credentials that are involved in credential stuffing typically come from a data breach which is completely unrelated to the service being attacked. So the only way really that these credentials will be valid on this new site is if people have reused their passwords. And unfortunately, that is still quite a common occurrence. Like for streaming services in particular, I think one of the reasons we touched on earlier is the fact that you've got multiple devices that you're logging in from, which makes it harder to use things like password managers, or maybe not as intuitive to use password managers as it would be if you're on a typical computer or mobile. But just generally, people we are still reusing passwords to the extent that credential stuffing is a viable attack.
Yeah.
And so once the attackers been able to identify, some successful logins, they want to exfiltrate those credentials so that they can sell them on. But they might also exfiltrate other things. So, depending on the site and what there is on it, they might want to get extra detail about those accounts. If I'm selling an account on, let's say this is a streaming service. If I'm selling a streaming service account on, I probably want to know what type of account it is, what features that account has, and that's information I'll be able to get once I've got it into the account. So if I can exfiltrate that as well and package that up and sell that, I'm going to have more success with my sales. And obviously, that's what phase 6 is, the post-attack phase. That's the selling of the information. It might be automated, manual, or you might just be selling, or just be sharing the information. So maybe just giving away some free accounts to increase your reputation on a underground forum.
Right. I believe you've got a demonstration now of how this actually works from the sort of attacker perspective. So I'm just going to hit play this, and you can talk us through what's happening.
Yeah, great. So this is Cyber Serial Security Blogs. This is my security blog, which is the most secure site ever. You can tell it's the most secure site ever because we have a big poster saying we are secure on it. So this is just where I share some security tips like what credential stuffing is, and as you'll notice, it's powered by WordPress. So how would an attacker go launching a credential stuffing attack against my website? Well, here we have OpenBullet 2. So this is one of the tools I mentioned earlier that is used for credential stuffing. And we're going to walk through how an attacker would actually use OpenBullet 2 to credential stuff my site. So the first thing they would need is a configuration file. Here we're going to upload one that we've created earlier. Attackers can create their own configuration files. They can also acquire some from other attackers. They are very often shared on underground forums. So here, let's just select this OpenBullet configuration file. As you can see here, they talk about the fact that the code is C#. It could have malicious behaviors because there's no honor among thieves. But here's the stacker view. This basically explains how, at a very high level, what's going on in this configuration file. So we can see a number of blocks here, and we're going to go into them and show what they are. So the first one here is randomizing the user agent. So when we talked through the defense bypass phase, we talked about impersonating different user agents. So that's what this block is doing, making sure that the request looks like it's coming from a different device. And here you can see in the custom headers here, when we send our login request, we've got that user agent. Then we want to capture the username and password. If we have a successful login, we want to know what username and password we used. And here we're going to check that the login was successful. So with WordPress, we get a 302 redirect when we're successful. So that's our success criteria there. And if the login fails, there's actually two types of failure. So first we have a failure where the account's not registered at all. And we also have a failure where the password entered was incorrect. And this is actually not a great way to present information back, because here the attacker can actually determine that they might have whether the account actually exists or not, which is extra information they can use to launch more targeted attacks. But once we successfully log in, we're going to go to the profile page, and we're going to capture the email address in this case. So this is just an example of the phase 5 when we're exfiltrating data, some non-public information. In this case, it's going to be an email address from this site. So that's kind of an overview of this config. Now, there are other things we can do in OpenBullet. Let's say that there was a capture in place, and we could add a block to solve that capture by sending it to a third-party capture and solvent service, which may use machine learning or a capture farm. And there's other things we could do depending on what we wanted to do. Now, obviously, with just a configuration file itself, we're not going to really get anywhere. We also need some credentials to throw against this site. So here we are going to upload a word list. In this case, we're going to upload a combo list which has 10,000 username and password pairs in it. Actually, what I'm going to need to do here is going to need to change the type here to word list or credentials even, to make sure that it marries up with the tool, because we've actually specified what type of a word list it is, and that means that it's going to be able to take the username and the password input here, as you can see here on the content with the login input, the user input, the password. So that's why we've changed the type of word list there to credentials. OpenBullet can be used for different types of attacks with different types of word lists. Okay, so we've got our word list, we've got our config. Let's start our job. We'll start a multi-run. Here we're going to select our config. So here is our config that we created. As you can see here, the word list type is credentials. So we select our config, and we will also select the number of bots we're going to use. This is basically the concurrency. Let's go with 10 bots. And select our word list. You can see some of the usernames and passwords in here. We've got Jolie's good password, which isn't really a good password, but anyway. Let's just continue. So in this instance, we're not actually going to use any proxies, but if we wanted to, if we're doing this against a site in the wild, we would add some proxies to hide our IP address. And in this case as well, the outputs, we're just going to output this locally, but you could output it to database, a file system, Discord webhook, or Telegram bot as well. So especially if you're working with a team, or the adversary is working with a team, they can send the outputs there. So we've got our combo list, we've got our config. To leave everything else as default, I think we're ready to create this job. All right, so here is our job ready to go. Just going to press start. And give it a second to think about it, and it should start going. And we are getting a lot of failure, which is expected. Again, credential stuffing only works if there is a reused password here, and whilst that is prevalent, it's not high enough that we should be expecting this to be lighting up in green. But there is enough success for it to be viable for attackers to use. So we'll let this run. As you can see on the data stats, we are currently doing about 1,500 a minute. So you can see how quickly these attacks can go through.
It's incredibly fast.
Yeah, it is.
I imagine it goes up as you have more concurrency in a bot as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and also depends. So obviously, if you've rented out a some compute power, you can really throw some compute behind it. You can do like way more than this. And as you can see here, we've had one success here. So Fred with their password, also not a great password. Again, here it's not really the strength of the password that matters. It's the fact that it's being reused. And here also you've got their email address. That's the non-public information we've been able to pull back from this thread at privatemail.com. So that shows that just with that username and password, because that was reused, we've been able to pull back some information back. So we're about halfway through. We've got another one come through here. Now this is a stronger password. Again, it's not about the strength of the password. But this is interesting because this is the admin user, and anytime as an attacker you get access to an admin, then you're really happy. We can see here as well the user agent is different. Remember, we are spoofing our user agent, so from the site's point of view, that's a completely different device that has logged in. And let's see if we'll have any more successes. We're just over 2/3 of the way through. So far, two hits and an admin hit. That's still very good going for the attacker there. They're happy with that. And just like that, a third one comes through. And a fourth. Well, now they all come in like buses. You wait ages and then they all come at once. Here, some better passwords here, but again, it's not the strength of the password, some different user agents. And we've got their emails come through. And our kind of check from in is kind of hovering around the 3,600. There you can see under the stats you've got a capture credit. Obviously, we're not bypassing any captures here, but if we were, they could also see how much that's costing them in terms of the credits they have with these API companies. And there we go. We've gone through those 10,000 username and passwords in about 3 minutes. Look at that. I could have gone on for a cup of tea, come back, and successfully attacked. So here we've got our hits. So this basically shows anything that has either come back as to check or come back as a success. So if we just go back to our job here, so we saw we had the 4 successes there. Out of the 4 successes, the most interesting one there is the admin one, right? I want to be able to access the admin account. So let's go back to our hits and let's find the admin account there in our successes. Where is it? That's Linda. There we go. Here's our admin account. So we've got the account. Let's actually prove that works, right? So let's log in to this. So this is a WordPress site. So if I can spell. That's how you log into WordPress. So let's take our admin. I think I've missed off the N. That's fine, we'll add that on. There you go, and let's take the password as well, because I'm not going to try and type that out. Just disclaimer, that is not a password I use on any other systems, so all right, so here we've got access, and let's first look at the users, because obviously we've got admin access. We can look at the rest of the users and just confirm that yes, those are the email addresses we've been able to pull back. So we have pulled back non-public information, so we've been successful in our attack. And let's leave a little message on this, because I think CyberSewer was getting too cocky. There we go. That's a bit more accurate now, isn't it? All right. well, there we go. So cybersecurity blog. Is it the most secure site ever? I'm not so sure. But that's how our credential stuff works, Alex.
Thank you very much. It's fascinating. I must admit, I've seen it a few times before, but it never fails to amaze me and scare me how easy that can be done, and just how quickly it can happen. But
yeah,
sorry, do you want to sort of go through some of this here, sort of the output of the next stages of the attack after that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, what we showed was quite a basic attack there. There wasn't really many defenses that the bot had to go through, and also wasn't pulling back. It was pulling back the email address, but it wasn't doing quite a complicated pullback. These two screenshots you see here are from real configs that are being shared for streaming sites. And as you can see here, they're actually, the first one there, they're parsing the subscription type, description, expiry date, renewal date, whether it's a trial or not. So again, they're being a lot more explicit and pulling back a lot more information from the successful sites. The second one there as well, again, the billing information, current plan, payment method, whether it's auto renew or not, and billing dates. And that's an attack.
That could be quite useful, couldn't it, for, say, if you wanted to list a particular type of account and maybe charge more for a premium account, or, one that lasts for a certain amount of time and that kind of thing, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. If you know an account is on auto renew, that's easier to sell than one that potentially you can sell as a one-off, and because you can say, yeah, you can promise that this is going to last longer. And obviously, if it's a premium account, that's going to be more valuable, whether that's an easier sell or more money you're making from the sale. Premium is always going to attract more attention.
Yeah, and speaking about sort of the listings of how these are actually sold, I think we've got some examples here of what that actually looks like on these sort of grey markets. Do you want to sort of talk through what? Obviously, we've redacted a bunch of information here of what the actual services were and the names of the attackers and things. But do you want to talk through what is actually shown to someone that might be trying to buy an illegally stolen account?
Yeah, so this is an attacker who's selling a streaming account, selling them for 12 months. So the first thing we see from this is that this attacker is very confident in their ability to keep acquiring accounts, because basically this 12-month basically warranty is saying that if this stops working for 12 in the next 12 months, they're gonna replace it. For them to do that, they need to be able to acquire another account if the account that they had has stopped working. So, especially if you look at that, and also if you look at the number of reviews they've got, they've got quite a high rating there. 37 negative reviews, but the rest are positive, on like 2,000 positive reviews. Right, this isn't someone who tends to not honor that warranty very, very often.
Yeah.
Also, what we can see, the price there is $65, but that's for 12 months. I'm not sure how much this account actually costs per month, but there's definitely going to be a discount on that. And the stock level, they're advertising unlimited stock there. So again, speaks to their confidence in being able to get these accounts whenever they need to. On the right, you've got this is actually the same adversary. This is their Telegram channel. And here they have some advertisements for some other streaming services. So it's not just this one. This adversary, their whole business model is breaching and selling streaming services. You can see they've got 4,500 subscribers who are watching this Telegram channel, looking for when new streaming accounts are available to order them. So they have an audience, and they have accounts.
Yeah. So in terms of defending against this, how to prevent credential stuffing attacks, obviously they've got all these ways of bypassing a lot of defenses here. So just go through from the top here. So we sort of touched on it a little bit, but MFA, multi-factor authentication, obviously when you try and log in, even if you get the username and password right, it's asking you to go to your phone or something and authenticate that it's really you. That's quite a high friction kind of requirement every time you log in to watch Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or something, isn't it? So it's quite a big ask of your customers. It might sort of frustrate people, but it's a fairly effective way. It does put some blockers in your way for the bot, doesn't it?
It definitely does because, and again, it goes back to I think I mentioned it when I went through the demonstration about the information presented back. So with Cyber Cyril's blog, an unsuccessful login would either be because the username, the password was correct, or the user was registered. And with the case of MFA here, again, it can be the site could present information back in a certain way. If the username and password are correct, and it only provides the MFA after it's validated the username and password are correct, the credentials to an attack has technically worked. They've validated that the username and password is correct, but they haven't been able to take over the account. So they will still need to do something else, whether that's MFA fatigue attack or something else to get access to the account if that was a high value account they wanted to get into. But they have MFA there has prevented account access straight away. And obviously, if the way you're presenting back information doesn't actually tell the attacker whether the username and password was correct before asking for MFA, then they actually don't even know, so they can't target the stronger MFA attacks. So I'll say, yeah, high effectiveness for that, but yeah, the user friction is very high as well.
Yeah, and we've talked a fair amount about capture already, so I won't go into too much detail on that, but I think that is a fairly high user friction one, especially if you're on, I think it's quite difficult to implement something like capture if you're on your smart TV or something like that. I've never personally seen it trying to distinguish which squares are traffic lights on my TV or that kind of thing. But again, quite easy to bypass for bots these days. In some cases, easier for bots to bypass it than humans. So moving on to sort of bot management. When I was saying the distinction between basic bot management and specialist bot management, quite often, your CDN or your WAF might have some bot management built into it or as a sort of add-on. But what we see quite often is these aren't really built to stand up to more sophisticated attacks like credential stuffing, which have a lot of proxy rotation and things like that in place. So while you're not often sort of adding any friction to the user journey, the effectiveness is similarly can be fairly low. It can work in some cases, but bots will tend to find a way around it. Whereas a specialist bot management solution, such as Netacea, is really built specifically to solve this kind of problem. And the idea is that it's more accurate, so you're going to be blocking more bots and low false positives, and it's quite effective in that way. Anything to add on to that, Cyril, or what do you see in terms of bot management? Is there is there something that the attackers are aware of trying to bypass specifically?
Oh, so the attackers are definitely aware of bot management, because that's that is the most really effective way that a company can protect against these. Like MFA is high on the effectiveness, but because you've got the high user friction as well, especially for something with like streaming, where it's not banking, the harm to the user isn't readily apparent to them. They are less likely to want to put extra effort in. Bot management is really the best way to get that high effectiveness, and because of that, the attackers are aware, and they are it's a constant cat and mouse battle with the attackers trying to bypass the bot management vendors fighting back. And I think that's why with a specialist bot management, where that is your bread and butter, you're going to have much higher effectiveness than the CDN, where they've got a lot of things that they're doing, and they're great at CDN, but they might not be as great as everything else that they're bundling in with it.
Sure. So a couple of the credential stuffing, and let's sort of talk a little bit about another kind of attack which affects streaming quickly, fake account creation. And this is sort of the automated process of signing up for accounts, typically using stolen or even just a fake identity. So do you want to sort of talk through the process of why of what that entails using the Blade framework again, Cyril?
Yeah, sure. So like with credential stuffing, fake account creation can also start with payment detail acquisition. Sometimes if you need some fake or some real payment details to create the accounts, you might need those. You also have your infrastructure acquisition. So what bot are you going to use for this? How are you going to control it? Proxies, and then your tool development. But here the reconnaissance changes a little bit. So whereas with credential stuffing, it was really how does this site work? And with fake account creation, you really want to understand two things. A, you want to understand, why am I creating a fake account for this site? So are there offers in play that I can take advantage of? And then also how does this site work in terms of what do I need to register for it and what defenses are in place? So you've got both your technical reconnaissance and some other scraping as well. And then your defense bypass is going to be pretty similar. I guess differences compared to credential stuffing is for fake account creation, you're going to want to make yourself look like a real human. So we've seen a lot of times where when you create a fake account, they might watch a few things, like if it's a streaming service, watch a few things to make it look like a real person instead of just a bot that's created an account and then doesn't touch it till it's sold on. And then the attack execution, whether that's what type of account you're trying to create. Sorry, that was an error there. I shouldn't say account takeover, that's account creation. But yeah, so whether that's social media, email, SMS, call, virtual wallet. And sometimes actually you need multiple of those. So for creating a fake account, you might need to first generate an email, before then you can generate the account on the site you're trying to generate. And then finally, after that, you'll get to your post attack. So you want to sell those accounts or use those accounts in a different attack. So one thing you'll notice from this is actually there's only 5 phases in fake account creation as opposed to the 6 phases in credential stuffing. And different attacks have different, kill chains and use different numbers of phases. So that often happens with the Blade framework.
Absolutely. And I think it'd be advisable for anyone to sort of go and explore the Blade framework. It's bladeframework.org, and sort of explore what all these different attack definitions mean, because there are detailed sort of descriptions of all these phases, tactics, and techniques. You talked about the tools in that first in the first phase there. So and this is I believe what it looks like to actually buy one of these tools or acquire one of these tools. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So unlike with credential stuffing where there's these open bullet tools which are kind of the standard and you're really getting configs for them, for fake account creation, the tools are generally created specifically for a certain site or multiple sites. So that first screenshot there, that's an account generation tool to generate premium accounts for a streaming service. And you can see from the actual seller selling this is quite a reputable adversary on this forum. They're forum verified.
12 years of service. That's
yes.
hell of a career.
12 years of service, 21,000 messages. They're prolific actor. And then the second one here again, so it looks like there's multiple services that this generator works for. They've claimed that there's no virus there. I never trust anyone who says 0% virus.
Yeah, it's a bit suspicious, isn't it?
Say that, yeah.
Yeah, it's protests too much, I think. Maybe a little bit. But it does encourage you to enjoy, so that's good.
Yeah, you gotta have good sales manner on these forums.
I mean, it's a business, right? They're trying to make money selling these. So, so maybe just take a step back and sort of talk about why adversaries would want fake accounts, because it might not be immediately obvious. So the first point would be to resell them, right? So say if you buy one account, maybe 4 or 5 people could use that account, so you can just basically resell it to other people, and sort of quadruple or make 5 times the money that you're spending on that account.
Yeah, it's almost like a slightly more legal, I guess, way, in terms of you're not breaking into someone else's account to sell that on. You're creating your own account, yes, using fake information, and then sell that on. So some adversaries who might be opposed to taking over accounts might say, actually, we can still do this. This fits our moral, our moral limits.
Yeah, another common one is welcome offer exploitation. So quite often you'll get, try for 3 months for free, or get a discount 50% off for the first 6 months. And if you can create accounts that have this offer attached to them in high volume, then you can save money there, or offer them for cheaper to other people as well, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. And even if it's a free month, if you can generate enough 3 month ones and sell those on, and just you can sell someone 12 months and essentially just rotate 3 month accounts to them.
Yeah, and this is obviously not the way that these offers are intended to be used by the services. Another big one as well is credit card cracking, validating stolen cards. So obviously, quite often you need an account to be created before you can start, trying to plug in payment details on the subscription to try and test these fake cards. But why are streaming services such an ideal target for that kind of attack?
I think when you're trying to validate a stolen card, you want to be putting small transaction amounts through. You don't want something that's going to get flagged up. Really, streaming accounts or streaming services, generally monthly fees are quite lowish.
Yeah.
They're not in your at least for most streaming accounts, they're not in the hundreds.
Yeah. And do you think that because they're so widespread, so many people use these streaming accounts, if you see it in your bank, in your transactions, in your statement, you might not think twice about X kind of streaming account showing up, because maybe you already subscribed to it anyway, or it doesn't look out of place.
Yeah, definitely. And even if it might come up and your bank might ask you to verify that is you making that transaction, and you might think, oh, did they miss a charge and are they charging me now for this?
Yeah.
Because I already have this account. So you might go through it, whereas it's if it's something else that you definitely don't have, then you'd be like, oh, what's this transaction doing here? So
yeah, I mean, and also the damage that could cause to the streaming service. You could end up getting your payment portal flagged if a lot of fraud is detected, and that obviously affects your ability to take payments and could be quite disruptive as well. So then going back over the how to prevent fake account creation, obviously we've got capture on there again, but quite often when you're registering for these accounts, you need to provide email verification. You need to go in a sort of form of MFA, similar kind of way. You have to verify your email or maybe even your phone, which I think are low friction, because you kind of expect that whenever you create any kind of account, don't you?
I think email is definitely expected these days.
Yeah.
I think the only friction comes in email if the email doesn't arrive in your inbox for ages, and you're like, well, I want to get on this account that I've created and use it, and you haven't sent me this email, so you click and resend the email, it doesn't seem to be coming. But in terms of effectiveness now, it's going to be low effectiveness because it's quite easy to create email accounts.
Yeah. It's maybe a little bit harder for phone verification to bypass that, because maybe you have to emulate, a phone, or you have to actually have an array of different phones to use, but still possible, just a little bit more effective than email probably.
Yeah, you see those pictures of the big SIM farms when those get captured. It's still adding friction, but not high effectiveness.
Yeah, and again, the same point on the basic versus the specialist bot management, as with account takeover. So how do you actually go about preventing these attacks? You talked a bit about the sophisticated, the specialist kind of bot management solutions, Netacea definitely being within that. So how do we tackle these kind of attacks, specifically on streaming accounts? So we mentioned before about how streaming services are available across different kinds of devices, your smart TVs, your consoles, as well as your browser or your desktop devices. So one thing that Netacea is built for is protecting against all these kind of endpoints. We protect websites, mobile apps, APIs, those endpoints all natively through the same integration. So it's very simple to do that. The reason for that is because we're agentless. We have a server-only integration. We don't ask you to install any agents on your applications or anything like that. That also makes us invisible to attackers. So we were talking before about these attackers trying to detect what defenses are in place and bypass them. So they will never see that Netacea is in place because we are on a server, not on the client. So that makes it very difficult for them to bypass our detection as well. Obviously, we have the ability to visualize attacks as they come in, and we are built for high traffic volumes. We have that cloud architecture. We can scale up to, we're ingesting and analyzing, 200,000 requests per second in some cases. So, even if there is a live event happening or something like that, we can deal with that volume. We're also very low friction to customers. We have an extremely low false positive rate, so it's very unlikely that we're ever going to mitigate against a real customer and prevent them from logging in. And we're not asking you to log in and make decisions. It's a fully autonomous detection and response system. And talking specifically about video streaming services, this is a customer case study I can talk about quickly. So this service has over 65 million subscribers and $7 billion revenue. And they had a particular issue they could foresee of a big live event. It's actually the biggest American football game of the year. You can probably guess what that is. And they're expecting a lot of traffic during this time. And they're expecting that, as they had in the past, received quite a lot of credential stuffing attacks and seen a lot of their accounts for sale on these grey markets. They're expecting them to use that sort of smoke screening tactic of hiding the attack within that traffic. So the result of that was calling on Netacea. During that time, we actually had no outages caused by those bots. We analyzed 24 million login requests during just the day of that game, that event. We blocked 5 billion of those being malicious. And within that, actually, I think about 1 million of those were purported to come from Xbox devices, bots hiding as those devices. So again, going back to those endpoints being exposed, we're able to detect and stop that. And you can see the verified false positive rate is extremely low here. So we're talking, a handful, maybe in hundreds of millions of requests analyzed across the contract lifetime to date. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us. If you have any other questions about any attacks that you might see on your streaming service or how we mitigate against those, please do get in touch. We do have a live demo of Netacea Bot Management on our website. You can see it linked there, so you can sort of have a look around, see how we investigate and block attacks of different kinds and how it all looks. And if you want to see your own data in there, I recommend starting a POC, and you can see our detection in action as well. Thanks very much, Cyril, for joining and giving us all that insight. And we'll see you again next time.
See you later.